Thanks a lot for having me. Yeah. Man, you're very high energy. I gotta pick it up.
No, you can stay down and I can stay up, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle and everyone's happy. That's how I like to go about this.
Sounds fun.
Welcome, though, dude. Do you want to start with a quick intro, who you are, what you do, what DFDV is, and what you work on?
Sure. Yeah. Hey everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joseph Onorati, CEO at DeFi Development Corp. DFDV is the ticker. We're the first Solana treasury company in the US, Nasdaq listed. Came out in April, and we've been raising money. We've done 4 financing rounds. We just closed another one on Monday to stack Sol. We run our own validators. Of course, delegate the balance sheet there and participate in Solana DeFi with about 10% of the balance sheet assets.
That's awesome. Thank you for the intro. And by the way, congratulations on the latest. I think you announced it yesterday.
Yep.
$125 million. Congratulations. Okay, so you're the first publicly listed Solana treasury company. When did you start working on DFDV, and how did this come to be? Like, what's your history with Solana and just this? Yeah, this came
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah. So the team at DFDV is mostly ex Kraken, and I was at Kraken for 8.5 years. The centralized exchange. Um, and a couple of my friends, I guess Parker White, who is the COO and CIO at DFDV now, him and I started talking in January about what the future would be in crypto after Choke Point 2 ended, and we'd been through, I'd say, a lot there at Kraken. And we said, well, public market's going to open up for one in the U.S., and 2, a bunch of these assets are not going to be considered securities anymore. And Solana had been named in the Coinbase complaint, so as a security, the Coinbase complaint against SEC. So we said, this is pretty interesting. We liked what MicroStrategy was doing. Of course, we saw what Sol Strategies was doing in Canada. Got a lot of respect there. Said, well, maybe this is a path. Original idea was like a stablecoin interest rate arbitrage play where we'd raise money in public markets and take that public market cash into DeFi yields. We thought there was like a big interest rate arbitrage there, but uh, we were both pretty bullish on Solana. I'd say very bullish on Solana, actually. And Parker's been running a validator for 2 years. Both of us have been participating in Solana DeFi. Like, we're yield farming degenerates, I'd say, since mid 21. On Solana. So I don't know. We kept talking about it, and it sort of seemed natural. And we said, let's run with this. And this is back in January. Late January, we settled on the idea, and then early April, we did the change of control and started executing on the strategy. Kind of funny, our CFO John, he made a days in tracker. It's a spreadsheet that just shows how many days we've been working on the strategy until we did the change of control. I think we were 57 days in when we had our first board meeting with the new public company and transitioned to the treasury strategy.
Well, okay, this is off topic, but I'm just curious because you brought it up. What do you think about the current state of Solana DeFi?
Uh, I don't know. I guess overall, I'm pretty happy with some of the projects for sure. Like, I think Camino, for example, is very well developed and has sufficient scale to compete with the Ethereum projects. But I think ultimately you kind of have to compare it to what's going on with um, the other smart contract chains. And I think there's still more. How do I put it? Like, room for innovation. I think the kind of uh, the yield farmers who were like at the edge of where the biggest yields, the most degenerate stuff is still happening on an Ethereum chain. And I'd like to see that transition. I know there's some cool stuff going on Solana, but I'd say DeFi is still just a bit behind Ethereum, but I think we're catching up. And I want to be a part of that, catch up and hopefully passing.
Oh yeah, thank you for humoring me there. Okay, I want to ask you, like, I feel like the most popular crypto related topic over the last couple months has been these DATs and these treasury companies, and it's been talked about nonstop. How far
Yeah.
along in the treasury company super cycle, if you will, are we right now?
Yeah. Maybe shout out to all the other DATs that have included my company in their decks. I appreciate that.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, I think we're actually pretty early here, so yeah, there's going to be ups and downs or whatever for sure, and uh, but I'm pretty bullish. I think a treasury company is strictly superior to an ETF, and if we compare like the total size of DATs to total size of even crypto ETFs, I think we got a long way to go there. There's a lot of room for education, a lot of room for growth. In other words, the TV the TAM, the total addressable market for DATs, I think is much larger than where we're at today. I mean, I kind of have to say this, right? Because I'm working with one, but I'm pretty bullish. I uh, I think we got a long way to go. Of course, there's going to be ups and downs, and it's a bit of a gold rush right now. I think with so many teams and projects trying to come into the DAT space, and I think the barrier to entry in the U.S. anyway actually isn't that high. So there's going to be a flood of them, and I'm sure some of them are going to blow up, but long term, I'm like very bullish here. I think there's going to be kind of micro strategy equivalents across many crypto projects, and definitely with Solana.
Like how you threw in the like hashtag ad there when you said you were bullish. Uh, why? Okay, why are treasury companies superior to ETFs?
Uh, I guess there's, but really it's the ability to generate yield on the underlying asset, and by yield I mean uh, like this Sol per share or Bitcoin per share, like crypto asset per share growth that you can't really get in an ETF. So it just comes down to the numbers. I mean, the investors make more money. And that can happen for a couple reasons. One is uh, maybe the asset that the treasury company is holding is stakeable, and then inside the treasury company, you can actually do stuff. Like you could run a validator, for example, like DFDV does. You can stake to the validator. You earn not just the like normal staking rewards, but you also earn the block rewards from the validator that can accrue to the investor. I guess that's kind of the simple one. But then there's also like I guess I'll kind of put it in air quotes, the active management that can happen, uh, which we have seen play out in other treasury companies and with DFDV, where uh, essentially financial engineering um, can result in additional crypto asset per share growth. So, for example, I think in the last month or so, DFDV grew Sol per share by about 50%. And last year, MicroStrategy grew Bitcoin per share or Bitcoin yield, I think they call it, by about 70%, over the whole year. And we also put out forward guidance and then reaffirmed it at the quarter end here just recently for, I believe the number is 262% annual Sol per share growth.
Whoa.
So I mean, you can't get this with the ETF. Like, even if you could stake in the ETF, maybe the ETF earns, 7% or something. But these crypto treasury vehicles have the ability to yield quite a bit more, especially in the bull markets.
How do you continue to keep up that and sustain that level of growth? That feels so high.
Yeah, I mean, I saw our forecast and I said, "Geez, this is a big number. Is this real?" And to go dig in, I'm like, "This actually looks possible." Uh, so the way this stuff works is basically if the treasury company trades at a premium to its net asset value, this is referred to as MNAV, and it's kind of a way to evaluate these companies. So maybe a company trades at 2x MNAV, so the company is worth twice as much as its treasury balance is, for
Mm.
example. And this varies, right? You can see DFDV's MNAV on its website, dfdv.com, and we have a bunch of ways to look at MNAV on the website there. And of course, MicroStrategy makes theirs available, and a number of the
Yeah.
treasury companies publish them. But you take that metric, and then basically, whenever you issue new stock and can sell it into the market, and then use that money to buy the underlying asset, you grow the crypto asset per share. So let's say, uh, for example, a stock's trading at 2x MNAV. You mint one share of stock, say for $2. Um, then you sell it into the market. You take your $2 and you buy $2 worth of the underlying crypto asset, and you just grew the crypto asset per share in, because you went from whatever you had to two additional dollars worth. Maybe my example with the math isn't great, but uh, I think you see where I'm going, and hopefully the audience does. But as long as you're issuing new stock at over 1x NAV, or have the ability to buy, the asset below the market price, say in the case of discounted locked sol from the Alameda or FTX bankruptcy, then you can grow the crypto asset per share, at which turns into like what MicroStrategy calls Bitcoin yield, or what we call SPS, Solana per share growth.
That's actually a sick explanation. Thank you. I guess to follow up on it, why does it feel like the asset Solana has been lagging so far behind in the treasury company race, if you will?
Bro, what are you trying to say about my business?
I'm giving you like a lob off the backboard to fucking dunk it through.
Oh yeah, okay, okay. Um, I got it. So, well, I honestly, part of it I think comes down to timing. So, Solana was very hot, say 4 or 5 months ago, and it looked like Solana was kind of winning uh, the narrative, I'd say, against Ethereum. There was, I'd say, capitulation and developers switching, and the chart looked great for Solana. And then I think the Ethereum kind of advocates were sort of, I don't know, looking for hope somewhere. And I think they found it in the some of the new Ethereum treasury vehicles, right? Like the Joe Lubin vehicle and the Tom Lee one. Um, and kind of the chart looks like it's going in the other direction now. So I think there was kind of this almost suppressed demand where uh, like we were nearly at capitulation for ETH holders, and then they say, "Oh my gosh, Tom Lee's on TV. He's saving the day." And so the theory, like the Sol vehicles came out first, then the Ethereum vehicles were okay. Wow, this works. The bankers know how to raise the money. The investors are interested. They come out with larger fundraisers, and now I think we're kind of right around the corner from a number of Solana DATs coming into play with larger fundraisers, and including ours, right? The one we just closed yesterday was our largest net fundraise to date, and I think there's definitely demand from investors to participate, more and in larger quantity in Solana DATs.
Wow. Congrats. I didn't realize that was your largest raise to date. Congratulations on that. So you did just announce that $125 million, which is a very substantial amount of money. I'm curious how like demand for these DATs is evolving. Like that's your biggest raise ever. So is demand at all-time highs right now, or it doesn't exactly work like that?
I think demand was probably at an all-time high uh, a few weeks ago. Um, and it's maybe a little cooler now than it was, but it's tough to say. I don't know. I think I have a good perspective, but I'm not sure my sample size is large enough, and maybe I'm a bit too much. I used to be an economist, or I studied economics, and to measure demand, I think is actually kind of challenging. I'll cop out on that one.
Why do you think like what is the best way to measure demand? How does that even work?
Uh, well, you have the only way to measure it that's accurate is with demonstrated preferences. Where people actually are buying the asset. I mean, you can kind of back into it with some like auction mechanisms where you put like you have to put dollars at risk kind of thing to measure what a demand curve looks like, but ultimately you only kind of have a few data points to kind of draw one. Like the stuff's like largely theoretical.
That's interesting. Fair cop out. I'll give you that one. I like let you off the hook with that one. So there were,
Appreciate it.
of course, and I appreciate you as well. There was a bunch. I think I don't know, 3 or 4 Solana treasury companies announced yesterday, or like in the last over the course of the weekend. Do you view these as competition, and does that make your goal with DFTV more difficult? Like, is it more difficult to raise money when there's more people that are trying to raise money adjacent from you?
Yeah, I do think it makes it more difficult to raise when there's others in market, but I don't think that it's necessarily specific to Solana. So, for example, if there was an Ethereum DAT in market at the same time, I'd say that's potentially competitive too. Even the Bitcoin ones could be competitive. I mean, I think largely or ultimately, all of these vehicles kind of drive more attention to crypto and more dollars into the space, and that's I don't know, it's probably overall positive. I mean, I know it's overall positive. Um, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that other vehicles in market does make it a bit harder to raise because the investors are comparing the pricing across these and saying, well, how do I differentiate between them? Um, and I think that makes the pitch a little harder to do.
Okay, here's what I actually want to know is that the most talked about thesis in tandem with the treasury companies is how this whole thing is going to end and everyone's going to unravel and be liquidated and forced to sell their soul or their ETH or their Bitcoin. And I think, I mean, this is people still tweet it and they're like, hot take, this is how it's going to end. But I think it's like the coldest take ever. From someone who's the CEO of a Solana treasury company, how do you foresee this ending or playing out and getting substantially bigger? Like, where does this go in 6 months or a year, especially assuming if the market cools off?
Yeah, my theory is consolidation. So I guess maybe I have two kind of prongs to this. One is I don't think that management teams of DATs are going to sell their balance sheet asset to buy back the stock. And so maybe that's a hot take. I don't think they're going to do it. I think virtually no one will do that. And there's a couple reasons for it. One, the management teams probably look at this and say, well, I've got like a kingdom here. I'm not going to reduce the size of my own kingdom by, selling my balance sheet asset and buying my stock. And then I also think uh, that if they do that, it's a death spiral because whatever caused that company to trade at below 1x NAV probably will cause it to continue to trade below 1x
Yeah.
NAV, tomorrow. So maybe the market looks at these and say, you know what, I don't trust this management team. They're going to screw it up. I'm going to price them at 0.8x. If that happens, and then they say, management says, well, let's sell some balance sheet assets and buy back the stock. Let's put a buyback program in place. That doesn't change anything about the management team. It shouldn't change what the market kind of collectively thinks about that debt. So I think that's a death spiral, and I think that's going to be a reason not to do the uh, not to sell the underlying asset. So I think most of these companies are like buying for life. Um, so that's probably overall bullish. I'm not sure that that causes them to unwind. I think the much more kind of realistic outcome is mass consolidation. So if these companies trade at under 1x, they become acquisition targets, and they become maybe there's like shareholder action. I think it depends on kind of the
Yeah.
share structure, um, who has control of the company and how hard it is to kind of have the shareholder action push for a transaction. But I think consolidation is very likely. And one interesting thing that we've been kind of looking at is uh, for the like M&A to
Mm-hmm.
be accretive, uh, the target doesn't actually have to trade below 1x NAV. It just has to trade below the MNAV of the acquirer.
Got
And
it.
then that transaction can be accretive on a crypto asset per share basis. Another thing that I think is very interesting is the asset of the DAT being acquired is irrelevant as long as it's liquid enough to sell it. So Sol DAT, for example, could acquire an Ethereum DAT and then dump all the ETH and buy Sol. and I think we're gonna
Whoa.
see.
When is that gonna
This is
happen?
definitely gonna happen.
Wait, what does
Yeah,
that look
sorry.
like? When is that gonna happen? How and when is that gonna happen? That's interesting.
Uh, yeah, I'm thinking it's probably more of a bear market thing where there's a bunch of DATs, there's a flight to quality, one of them trades at a premium, a lot of the others trade at, 1x or slightly below, and then the roll up happens. That's
Whoa.
my theory.
Sailor buys Tom Lee, floors the ETH, just hammers Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's right. Man, that would be such a Chad and Bull move.
Can you imagine? That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
can.
DFTV buys strategy. All right, this was sick, dude. I appreciate you coming on. It's sort of like a wrap or a close off. Like, I don't know where we've kind of talked about it, but like, where do you think this is going? Like, what should people, maybe especially the retail, be paying attention to? What do you think announcements are looming? Like, what is next for this meta or super cycle, if you will? I don't even exactly know how to classify it, but I'll kind of let you take it how you want.
Yeah. I guess not super interesting necessarily on where I think it's going to go. I think basically anything that's not a security or a stable coin in the top 100, maybe even beyond the top 100, is going to have a DAT in the next, say, 6 months.
Whoa.
I think these things that, like I said, the barrier to entry is not very high. I think there's going to be a lot of these, and I think it's great for the crypto space kind of broadly. It opens up, the uh, access to more investors, and it's sort of a forced hodl situation, which I think is pretty good. I would say uh, one thing, and I suspect the audience here is largely crypto native, and so am I. But there's a lot of stuff in the public filings that these companies put out. They have to put in like as amendments to all of their filings, like the binding agreements that they um, have done. So you can go read details of how their fundraising actually worked, what their cost of capital is. And there's an enormous amount of detail in the filings. If you just go have a look. So if you're thinking about participating in investing in DATs and you're coming from the kind of crypto sphere, highly recommend looking at a few filings, and there's a lot of information in there.
Word. Joseph, it was awesome, man. I hope I did my best to calm down a little bit. I was a little excited, but dude, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, man.
Peace.
Much love.